Hello everyone, Dr. Polaris here. While Australia's Mesozoic fossil record is notoriously patchy, with its dinosaurs often being pretty fragmentary, the continent has produced several genera that are represented by a relatively good material, including the Ankylosaur Kunbarasaurus, as well as the subject of today's episode, Muttaburrasaurus. Once portrayed as essentially an Australian version of Iguanodon, with the Walking with Dinosaurs depiction being the most well-known example of this, more recent findings have significantly altered our understanding of this interesting animal. Native to what is now Queensland in northeastern Australia, from the Albian to Cenomanian stages of the mid-Cretaceous, Muttaburrasaurus was a comparatively large herbivorous ornithopod that could reach up to 8 metres or 26 feet long. Once thought to have weighed roughly 2.8 metric tonnes, more recent studies have significantly increased this figure to between 7.9 and 8.8 metric tonnes, making this genus comparable in mass to Tyrannosaurus and large bull African elephants. The holotype specimen was found at Rosebery Downs Station near Muttaburra, and consisted of a partial skeleton that included a semi-complete skull and lower jaws, vertebrae, parts of the pelvis, and elements from both the front and hind limbs. These were dated to the Cenomanian circa 96 million years ago, with the fossils hailing from the Mukunda Formation. Although originally assumed to have been a flexible quadrupedal iguanodontian, recent studies of the inner ear of Muttaburrasaurus have shown that the genus was mostly bipedal, only dropping down onto all fours when moving slowly. The jaws were narrow, with the skull appearing triangular when seen from above. It was once thought that Muttaburrasaurus possessed a toothless premaxilla, similar to other iguanodontians, with the genus at times being classified as either a rhabdodontomorph or an elasmarian. However, in a paper published on the 9th of April 2026 by Matthew Hearn et al., it was found that Muttaburrasaurus actually retained teeth on the premaxilla, with this being a basal trait among Ornithischian dinosaurs. This means that the genus was probably not a rhabdodontomorph, and may not even have been an iguanodontian, instead perhaps being a more basal ornithopod that developed its large body size independently. In fact, Muttaburrasaurus is now the most massive ornithopod to have retained premaxillary teeth. In addition, it was also found that the distinctive bump on the animal's nose was actually hollow and contained two large, complex air-filled chambers. These would have slowed down the airflow as the dinosaur breathed in, which indicates that Muttaburrasaurus possessed an acute sense of smell, utilised for finding food, avoiding predators, or to assist in navigation. This feature also matches the very large olfactory bulbs in the brain of the genus. On a related note, the paper by Hearn et al. Also provided a reconstruction of the animal's head, which is notable only in that it may be one of the ugliest renditions of an extinct species I've ever seen. It's a weirdly shrink-wrapped, wrinkly depiction, with the pale colour scheme not helping matters, making the poor Muttaburrasaurus look like a sickly boiled chicken. It also reminds me of the artwork produced for Dougal Dixon's The New Dinosaurs. Thankfully, other significantly more appealing images of the genus have since been made by talented online artists. These reconstructions highlight just how narrow and elongated this animal's jaws actually were, with Muttaburrasaurus probably being a highly selective browser. It lived close to the shores of the inland Eromanga Sea, which covered much of the Australian interior between 140 and 90 million years ago, with CT scans of its skull indicating that the genus possessed specialised nasal salt glands in order to remove excess salts obtained from its diet. Muttaburrasaurus is currently the only named animal genus from the Mukunda Formation, although the fragmentary remains of other ornithopods, as well as ctenochasmatoid pterosaurs, have also been found there. It probably also lived alongside ankylosaurs, smaller elasmarians, and was probably hunted by megaraptorans. Although given the size of adult Muttaburrasaurus, juveniles were likely the prime targets. Thanks to the results of the recent reanalysis of this animal's skull, we can now gain a better appreciation for just how unusual Muttaburrasaurus really was, with the genus more closely resembling a very large chunky elasmarian than an Aussie iguanodon. A potential close relative, Fostoria dingbangunmal, is known from the Cenomanian-aged Grimmen Creek Formation of New South Wales. Abundant opalized fossil material attributed to this genus were found near Lightning Ridge in the 1980s, and have been assigned to 4 different individuals that ranged from juveniles to fully grown adults that may have reached 5 metres long. Additionally, in the Walking with Dinosaurs episode Spirits of the Ice Forest, Muttaburrasaurus was shown to be a contemporary of the small Ornithopod Leaellynasaura, although in reality the two lived millions of years and hundreds of miles apart. While Muttaburrasaurus was endemic to Queensland circa 96 million years ago, Leaellynasaura inhabited what is now southern Victoria and was a more ancient animal. Native to the Eumerala Formation during the Aptian to Albian stages of the early Cretaceous, between circa 118 and 110 million years ago, this was a small herbivorous ornithopod that probably measured about 1.8 metres long when fully grown. Once thought to have possessed an incredibly elongated tail and disproportionately large eyes, it's more recently been argued that the genus is only known from partial jaw and cranial material, with all other alleged post-cranial fossils being referable to other contemporary ornithopods. Interestingly, this still means that a currently unidentified small ornithopod from the Eumerala Formation possessed a ridiculously long tail that measured 3 times the length of its torso. Being a polar dinosaur, Leaellynasaura dwelt in the cool temperate forested ecosystem, with a climate and average annual temperatures roughly analogous to that of Tasmania or New Zealand today. Although, as shown in Walking with Dinosaurs, these animals would have had to deal with long periods of cold winter darkness, which may have lasted for several weeks or months. Therefore, it's quite probable that Leaellynasaura possessed some kind of insulating coat in order to keep the cold at bay, and may have slept in underground burrows. This animal's classification is still somewhat uncertain, although several recent studies have found it, as well as other polar Australian dinosaurs such as Diluvicursor and Gallionosaurus, to have been members of the Gondwanan ornithopod clade Elasmeria, which were also native to South America and Antarctica. In life, Leaellynasaura would have been a low-browsing herbivore that fed on ferns, cycads and horsetails, while attempting to avoid predators such as indeterminate megaraptorans and carcharodontosaurs, although ambushed by Coolosuchus wouldn't be a problem, as the huge temnospondyle had been dead for a few million years. Speaking of Walking with Dinosaurs, I'm sure many of you have heard about the tragic passing of Ben Bartlett, who composed the now iconic soundtrack for this series. I'd like to dedicate this episode to his memory, given that Bartlett's wonderful score really injected such a sense of scale, awe and tragedy into a show that lives long in the memories of paleontology enthusiasts everywhere. And on that sad note, thanks for watching everyone. The next episode will be covering the Lazarus phenomenon, wherein animals previously only known from fossils and assumed to be extinct are found to still be alive and kicking in the modern world. See you again soon. Cheerio.